Hey guys, it's Wasbret here. Today we're going to take a look at the new version of Dynamic FPS 1.5.2, which has promised to fix some of the major stuttering that was happening in 1.4. Straight out of the bat you can see that a lot of the stuttering is a lot better now. We're going to be taking a look a lot more in depth to what is happening. Each of the tests is going to have two categories, one is fresh boot and one of them is warm boot. So you're going to notice that fresh boot tends to have a lot more stuttering than a warm boot. During a fresh boot the game is not yet finished loading the shaders, so it takes a little while for it to warm up. You can see FPS++ performing a little worse than the Dynamic FPS now, and Dynamic FPS 1.4.2 is a lot worse than Dynamic FPS 1.5.2. Dynamic FPS 1.5.2 has ironed out a lot of the stuttering that used to happen on 1.4.2. Now we're taking a look at Kakariko. This is going to be two different tests. In the first test, we're looking at Dynamic FPS 1.4.2 and Dynamic FPS 1.5.2. And here you can see Dynamic FPS 1.4.2 performing slightly worse than Dynamic FPS 1.5.2. Despite the similar performances, the Dynamic FPS 1.4.2 is slightly worse. And here I'm going to change Dynamic FPS 1.4.2 to FPS++. And here we can see FPS++ performing slightly worse than Dynamic FPS 1.5.2. A little bit further into the video you can see the exact same stutter that happens on every single test, just about here. Now we're going to take a look at FPS++ against Dynamic FPS 1.4.2 against Dynamic FPS 1.5.2. With an added FPS cap with rivet tuner, this will make the timeline very clear and very easy to understand. Straight out of the bat you can see the old version of Dynamic FPS having a lot more stuttering. FPS++ has quite a lot less stuttering, but it still suffers from some micro stutter. In here I'm going to replace 1.4.2 with the default 30 FPS cap. Straight out of the bat you can see that the behavior is very similar between the three. Now we're going to take a look at combat. This is on a fresh boot, which means the game was just loaded. You can see very similar stuttering between the two. This is caused by the shaders being loaded. In this very specific instance, Dynamic FPS is performing slightly worse. The stuttering and the performance on this very instance in a fresh boot is very similar between the two. In fact, Dynamic FPS is running slightly better. Now we're going to do this exact thing again, but from a warm boot perspective. If you look at the previous test, now we're going to notice how much less stuttering there is. This seems to be caused by the way the emulator handles shaders. Despite the shaders have been already built for this encounter, the first time something happens, regardless of shaders being built or not, it seems to stutter quite a lot. Straight out of the bat we're looking at a very smooth experience, but the first thing you're going to notice is that FPS++ is performing slightly worse. Now we're going to look at the physics between the two. First thing you're going to notice, FPS++ has this slowdown on the wheel. This does not happen if you cap the FPS to 30. And the new Dynamic FPS 1.5.3 beta seems to fix this physics problem. Now we're going to do a really big stress test. This will include combat, explosions and a little bit of walking on a fresh and a warm boot. In this scenario, Dynamic FPS is performing a lot worse than FPS++, with having a lot more severe stuttering on 1.4.2 and 1.5.2 seems to be performing about the same. In my experience, Dynamic FPS 1.5.2 is actually quite a lot smoother, with 1.4.2 being quite a lot more stuttery, with FPS++ being also a little bit more stuttery but not that much. So far it seems 1.5.2 is the best version. Now on the warm boot we are going to clean up a lot of the stutter that was happening in the beginning. This is more easy to judge what's happening in the actual mode. Straight out of the bat you can notice FPS++ running a little bit worse. The game stutter that happened on the fresh test is actually gone now, and everything is a lot smoother. Between these three you're going to see that FPS++ has the lowest drop. Between these right now you're going to notice FPS++ has a little bit more stutter, as well as Dynamic FPS 1.4.2 having a little bit more micro stutter. And Dynamic FPS has improved quite a lot since its last iteration. Thank you guys for watching, have a great day, feel free to subscribe and I'll see you next time.